whether they're individuals and hires them to work for the government, would we call those government employees or not? If they hire groups of individuals, let's just call them Blackwater, are they working for the government or not? And it gets tricky. The one thing I do want to highlight is that they are acting as agents of the state. It is interesting that even though they're acting as agents of the state, they're these, technically private firms or private profit firms. And it's quite interesting that even the government, who is supposed to be so good at protecting everything, they realize that it's better to hire these for-profit entities than rely on government things. The issue with one of the many issues with what they're doing is the government is hiring them to do things that the government wants. And a lot of people have some moral questions with some of the ways that they're treating people. I do think they're an interesting case study. The fact that there's more and more reliance on the profit mechanism for the military, I think that's interesting. On the other hand, I'm not ready to endorse it because government is saying, hey, we want to do these bad things, can you help us do it? So they've received a lot of criticism in recent years. So just to be clear, the system that I'm advocating is voluntary relations between private groups rather than hiring these, I don't even know if Blackwater does these things, but let's just assume these unfriendly people who are mistreating people. I think we should distinguish between those. Yes?
Just out of curiosity, talking about being able to choose one or the other. Say for something like government-regulated driving regulations. How would that come into play with?
I am a huge fan of this idea, especially for drunk driving regulations. So here's my idea. Rather than having the federal government mandate a .08 drunk driving limit, or drinking driving limit, I should state, why not allow different people to come up with different rules to experiment what is best? So the idea I had in mind is Street A over here could be owned by one company and say, we are the non-drinking and driving road. Street B could say, you are allowed to have up to .10, but the speed limit is 5 miles per hour. Okay? And then just let the customer decide. I don't know which one is better. I seem to think allowing .10 and a 5 mile per hour speed limit might be a safe thing to do. I don't know. If it's shown,
it's called Bourbon Street.
there we go. So what we need is more Bourbon Streets in the United States.
Every street.
So then wouldn't that be pretty inefficient? Because crossing Bourbon Street is something I try to avoid.
Yeah, I mean, you would have a choice of what types of roads you would want to be near. In I think most cases, private roads tend to be bundled with the neighborhood. So the Disney has a whole network of private roads in the park, leading into the park. And I think it would be quite sensible for Disney to say, okay, when you're here, we're going to have the set of private roads that the people want. There is this city that they just developed within their confines in Florida called Celebration, Florida. They've got a lot of strict rules telling people what type of drapes they can have inside their house, all these different things. But as a result, it looks very nice wherever you walk around. And I think we could have a similar set of rules for streets as well. You can imagine even one street saying, no drinking and driving here, except Friday and Saturday at 3 a.m., okay? Just depending on who the customers are, and the speed limit is 5 miles per hour. I'm not saying this is a good idea. but I'm saying we should allow the market to discover and look, rather than having the central planners decide 0.08 for all people in the nation.
It seems like in a private legal system, like in most private markets, you get what you paid for. So if you follow Bourbon Street all the way to the end, there's what's called the Marigny. And so I make a reasonable salary and am confident that I can afford a private security agent or some dispute arbiter if I needed one. But then in the Marigny, there's all these, I don't know, vagrant kids on bicycles. So what's to stop me from just like plowing them over in my car for the fun of it, for sport?
Again.
Yeah.
So one of the important lessons we can learn from your example is that there's lots of areas in our current society that don't receive the same level of service that other people receive. And so, in theory, government is supposed to be protecting everybody. As a practical matter, there's certain neighborhoods where they just don't even want to be involved with. They'll just say, well, we'll only go there every once in a while. If anything, I would argue that lower income people would benefit from having more reliance on private security and less monopolization. There was a case of a housing project where the residents got together and they said, we are going to have our, not for cost, free private security that is going to patrol the housing complex to prevent some of the bad things that were happening. And what happened? The government police came in and said, no, you can't do this. We are the police here. So if you look at the people who are most maltreated by the legal system and by police, it's oftentimes lower income people. And I think, if anything, they would benefit the most from what I'm talking about. Yeah?
What would the prison system look like?
This is a very interesting question. Right now, most people assume that when somebody does something wrong, you need to put them in jail. That's the way people have been accustomed to thinking about things. 1,000 years ago in England, it was much more of a restitution-based system, where if I harmed you in some way, we would go to these to dispute resolution mechanisms that were largely private, and the judge would say, you're supposed to pay him back for that. So I would try and make you, to whatever extent I can, make you whole. So that's the way a large portion of disputes were settled. Over time, after the Norman invasion of England, the kings started saying, oh, they're paying money back and forth. I wonder if we can have them pay money to us, the royalty as well. So they started passing more and more laws saying, you're not violating just his peace, you're violating the king's peace as well. I think you should pay me restitution as well. And over time, it started becoming more and more, you've got to go directly pay the government money. That undermined this decentralized system where people had no incentive to resolve disputes on their own. And then over time, that dried up, and then we see what we have now is criminal law, not because it's beneficial for us, but because the government viewed this as a way of enhancing revenue. So that's one thing to think about. When I lived in California, well, it's my roommate's fault, but he left my keys in my car, and my car got stolen. Luckily, it got found 3 weeks later, and it was in perfect shape. So I was very happy for the thief. It was a kind thief, and he kept my car in perfect shape. But at the end of those 3 weeks, rather than him having to pay me money for my inconvenience, the police found him and presumably put him in jail. So rather than me getting compensated, now my taxes go up to put this guy in jail.